This video is brought to you by the Disc Golf Nerd Patreon support team. Go to patreon.com/discgolfnerd. What's up, everybody? Welcome to my review of the Latitude 64 Havoc. This one is in the Gold Line Burst. Beautiful disc. Big thank you to my friend Chris Caulfield for sending me this disc to test and review. He's been a huge supporter of the channel and a very generous, kind-hearted person that I really appreciate having, not only to support me and my channel, but as a friend as well. And yeah, he sent me this thing along with a bunch of other great plastic recently, and I was happy to get out and test it. Spoiler alert, this thing actually found its way into my bag pretty much straight away. So let's get into the review. The Havoc is a high-speed distance driver from Latitude 64. I feel like it's been out for quite a while, and it's one of those discs that just slips through the cracks on me, but Chris actually bags these and has been using them for a while, and so he threw one in for me to check out, and I don't think I had ever thrown one before that. My only other real experience with this disc was back in the Trilogy days, the Latitude days. Ricky used to use one for like long turnovers and rollers and stuff, but he had like a beat up deco die one, so I'm not really sure how that would compare to this particular run. Gold Line Burst, I really like the stamp on this one. Very nice, cool lettering for sure. And here are your flight numbers: 13, 5, -1, and 3. And I would say for my arm speed, that is pretty much dead on based on my testing. So I will say that based on my experience, these kind of newer Gold Line Burst discs do seem to be a little bit more stable than I kind of expect at times. And this thing is brand new, so always have to kind of take that into account as well. But that's just kind of how I have to do it with the reviews. I can't really review discs that are broken into different stages of wear. It kind of doesn't really make sense to do anything other than review them straight off the shelf. So this one does still have a little bit of flashing on there and stuff, and I'm sure as that breaks in, it will start to lose some stability. Taking a look at the dome on this thing, you can see it definitely has some pop top to it, which is nice, but not so much that it feels weird in the hand, because I'm not a huge fan of big pop top domey drivers and the way they feel in my hand. This thing feels really nice to me. The Gold Line plastic is well documented on my channel. It's one of the most high quality premium plastics on the market. It's beautiful. I love this burst too. It's quite subtle but really pretty, really nice bright color that's super easy to find out there on the course. But yeah, you can see there's definitely some pop top on that, which I think is probably giving it a little bit of extra stability over maybe some kind of flatter Gold Line runs in the past. Taking a look at the bottom, I'll say Havoc on there somewhere. There it was. Latitude 64, made in Sweden. There's probably a weight on here, although I don't think I've ever even looked. Let's see. See if I can find it. There it is, 173, so basically max weight. It's got a pretty wide rim, as you can see here. It's got a little bit of a squared off lead edge. It's not super rounded, but no problems for me. You guys know I have big hands. It's a comfortable feeling disc in the hand overall for me. I have no issues with it. Maybe a little bit sharp. If you don't like the wide rim vibe, you're not really going to like any high-speed distance driver, I guess, but it's something you kind of have to make your peace with if you want that extra speed for that extra distance out there on the course, and for certain shot shapes and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, definitely some pop-top dome, pretty comfortable rim, but has some width to it as you'd expect for a 13-speed disc. I definitely think the flight numbers are pretty spot on. Let's put it up next to some other options. First of all, we have this Big Z Nuke that I dyed. Came out pretty nice. Shampoo dye. You can see how I do that on my channel if you guys are interested. Just search for Disc Golf Nerd dyes. It should come up pretty easy. And there it is next to the Nuke. The Nuke is kind of like one of the original 13 high-speed distance drivers on the market. You know, I had the first run Nuke right when it came out, and it was one of my favorite distance drivers at the time. I actually kind of stopped throwing Nukes because I lost that first run. That was really the nail in the coffin for me. I moved on from there because it was my favorite one. I had trouble duplicating the flight with other runs. This is the new Paul McBeth Hades, which is 12-speed, technically 12.6, -3, and 2. Full review coming soon on that guy, but let's put it up next to that as well. The Hades definitely has much more of a flip up and ride to it than the Havoc, especially for my arm speed. Definitely more understable, for sure. The Big Z Nuke actually pretty similar in terms of flight, but I didn't really test it all that much, to be honest. And then we have the Barbarian Stronghold Thrasher straight out of my bag. Thrasher is my go-to distance driver under most circumstances. It's also a understable 12-speed, quite similar to the Hades overall, but there it is next to the Havoc just as a quick comparison. So all in all, I like the feel. The Goldline plastic is one of the best on the market. It's beautiful. I'm sure it'll break in nice as well. And the premium plastics, especially from the Latitude line, just seem to hold flight characteristics for such a long period of time. It's really amazing how long it takes to break in some of these modern premium discs. It's really, really awesome. And it's great. It gives you a lot of extra life out of your discs. So let's talk about the flight of this thing. As I alluded to earlier, it went pretty much straight in my bag after testing because I really like the flight of it for hyzer shots. It really works well for my kind of distance hyzers where I can throw it flatter and not have to put it on as much hyzer, and I can kind of just play for the fade. Where the Thrashers, you can get them the hyzer for sure, and certain times they're still going to work better if I wanted to kind of push a little more or kind of flip up hyzers and stuff. But if I want to throw something that's mostly flat to slight hyzer and just get it to go pretty straight up to speed and then swing in with a strong fade once it starts slowing down, the Havoc is great for that. It also, the fade starts to kick in a little bit sooner since I'm not throwing super fast. With my arm speed, I'm getting a pretty strong kind of workable overstable flight out of this thing from my arm. Now, into the wind, it definitely flies straighter. If you have a bigger arm, I'm sure it would get flippier over time. As I talked about earlier, I know Ricky has used these in the past for rollers and turnovers and stuff. I'm sure the one he was using was broken in, first of all. Also, he's one of the absolute top arms in the world. And I also remember seeing recently on some coverage that Nico appears to be throwing rollers with one of these pretty much the same run of newer run burst Havocs, and but Nico is basically one of the top players in the world, and no one really gets over on a disc on anhyzer like Nico, so I'm not surprised that he can roll a little bit more stable disc because he's so good at coming over on a disc and getting it down on that strong roller anhyzer angle. But for me, my arm speed, it's definitely more of a hyzer disc. I can throw it into some wind. I can kind of play it around the corner. I can throw it on anhyzer and it'll flex out. I'm still kind of experimenting with that, and that's something I continue to want to test as I get out there and throw. I haven't been playing a lot of rounds, unfortunately, but I do want to get a little bit more experience throwing it on anhyzer. I should have done a little bit more of that testing to bring that data to the review, but I was just finding it to be something I could throw nice and flat and it would just hold straight, swing in on a nice strong fade, maybe catch a little skip, and it works really nice for those left to right or right to left shots for me out there on the course so far. I've definitely gone to it multiple times in the recent rounds since I put it in my bag, and it's working out well. You'll see James definitely can get a little bit more stand up and ride out of this thing with his arm speed. And I remember when I first met James, the Havoc was one of his go-to distance drivers. He had a couple of different, I believe, Goldline Havocs at that time that were broken in that he ended up unfortunately losing when he went out on tour. But as those got broken in for him with his arm speed, he was getting big distance where they'd flip up, stand up, roll over, and still kind of come back. So I think this run is probably a little bit more stable than some of the other ones, although I do not have direct experience with that. I think this thing could really get out there far for me once I start to break it in, or if I get comfortable throwing it out on anhyzer and stretching out some of that flex distance. But for right now, it's working out super well as a disc I can throw on a hyzer instead of my Thrashers because I can just throw it flat or keep it on that hyzer without any real risk of rolling it over accidentally, but it's still throwable. It's definitely overstable enough for my arm speed and the way I've been throwing recently, but if you had a bigger arm, I'm sure this thing would flip up and ride a little bit, go much straighter overall, but still have enough fade when it slows down due to that wide rim and the fade that's kind of inherent in the mold. That is my review on the Latitude 64 Havoc, the first distance driver to break into my bag in a long time. You guys know, if you've been following me in the channel, with my in the bags and stuff, I've basically thrown nothing but Thrashers in that distance slot for the last couple years. Before that, it was the Trespass, and then there was some overlap there, and I just started kind of layering a lot of different Thrashers. It's worked well for the most part, but I do really like the way this Havoc has been complementing them for that little bit more overstability and a little bit more speed too, so I can kind of hit it harder on lower lines and stuff. not worrying about any kind of accidental flip and having that strong fade. That's my review. Thanks for watching. Thanks once again to my good friend Chris Caulfield. If you like what I do, you enjoy the content, please consider subscribing if you've not done so already. I'm on my way to 10,000 subscribers, and we are real close now, so I'd love to bring you guys along for the ride on that and continue to build this thing, take it to the next level. Thanks to my Patreon supporters as well. I will check you all very soon. Cheers.